Stampers, Kelly Acheson at astampabove.com, coming to you from Menasha, Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining me for this video today. I have a new fun fold, at least it's new to me. It's called a double front fold. Are you ready for this? Oh, and boom! Isn't this fun? I am going to show you how easy this is to make, and I'm also going to give you some great tips on embossing paste and masking and our new alcohol markers called Stampin' Blends. Shout out to Cindy Ellers. She is my friend in downline, and she actually sent my mom a Thanksgiving card using this fold. So I knew I had to make one and share it with all of you. So let's get started and I'll show you how easy this is. First, let's start with our cardstock layers. I've got a layer of crumb cake cardstock. This is 6 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it's scored at 4 1/4 on the long side. Then I've got a piece of Whisper White that is 8 by 5 1/4. 2 pieces of Cherry Cobbler. These are both 3 by 3 1/2. And 2 pieces of Whisper White that are 2 3/4 by 3 1/4. I'm going to start off with our card base here, and I am just going to fold on that score line and give it a good burnish with our bone folder. I decided to use the Holly embossing folder because, well, this is a Christmas card and this is a beautiful embossing folder, but it also matches one of the elements in my stamp set, so I'll get to that in just a second. All I want to emboss is this small layer on the front. So I'm going to put this in my embossing folder and make sure that you're putting your fold line up to where the image actually starts. Don't just think that you can fold it over the edge and life is going to be grand. You need to make sure that that fold line is up there where the image starts. And so that this embosses correctly, you always want to make sure that whatever you want to be raised up, you can read the writing on the folder. I'm going to run this through my Big Shot and I'll be right back. Okay, here we go. And isn't that just gorgeous? I love, love, love this. I'm going to give it another good burnish here. This part is ready to roll. Now the 2 pieces that are 2 3/4 by 3 1/4, I've already stamped them up. I was just afraid that this video was going to run too long, and so I did a few things ahead of time. So I've got both of these stamped up. I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Blends to color in the images. This is the dark Cherry Cobbler. And then I'm also going to color all of my little wine. The wine in my wine glasses, but only the ones that are red on the inside layer. I should say the first inside layer. And the reason why I left the one on the front clear is because it says, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. So that's white wine. But if the white runs out, I'll drink red. And so that's where my red wine comes in. I just thought it was kind of a cute little play on words here. Now, why am I using the Stampin' Blend alcohol markers versus just regular markers? Well, I like the shadowing, or the shading I should say, that I can get with these markers. I'm using the dark Old Olive and now the light Old Olive to come in on my holly, and I can blend and make that just look like it's shaded on the side, and that gives it a really artistic look. I've also got my color lifter here in case I go outside the lines like it did just a little bit here. You can take away the mistakes that you made. So this marker is just like magic. I absolutely love it. All right, next I've got the inside of my card, and I'm going to take this and fold it in half. Now we're not going to do anything with the front here, but we are going to stamp on the inside here. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about this stamp set. This is called Half Full, and this is a fabulous stamp set for Christmas or all occasions, because while we do have the Christmas verses here, we also have a bottle of wine. The wine improves with age. We improve with wine. May your glass always be half full. The best wines are the ones we drink with friends. So you've got a great variety here to make any kind of card you need. Well, probably not a sympathy card. I don't think that would work too good. But anyways, this is a stamp set that was designed by Linda Baldwin, one of my fellow demonstrators. She got to design this stamp set with Stampin' Up! For achieving $1 million in sales. So it's pretty exciting, right? I think she did a fabulous job. On the inside of the card, I've got a few stamps that I'm going to use out of the set. And you have to use Memento ink with the Stampin' Blends. And this is where I'm going to show you the difference between using Stampin' Blends and using markers. So I'm just inking that wine bottle up in the black. Then I'm bringing in my Cherry Cobbler, and I'm going to put my Merry Christmas in here. And then I love the little holly berries. They go along with the embossing folder and also just the Christmas theme. So I'm just going to put those right in there. Now I also took just a Post-it note and I stamped my bottle of wine. So let me show you how I did that. The sticky part of my Post-it note is where I'm stamping. And when I do masking like this, I always like to stamp on the sticky part so that my mask will be ready to stick. I'm just going to put down a scrap piece of paper here so I don't make a mess. I don't need the whole bottle, I just need the bottom part of it. And then what I did is I cut this out, and here is my mask. I am going to cover up the wine bottle and bring in my crumb cake ink and a sponge. I didn't want my wine bottle just sitting out there in Never Never Land, so I chose to add some faux ground here, if you will. This was a pretty good idea. The other thing that I used on this card is the painter's palette. I just wanted this image with the little random dots. So you can just grab any type of stamp set that has some random dots in it. If you're gonna recreate this card, I hope you do. It's a lot of fun. And I'm leaving my mask on while I just stamp some of these random dots. And it just helps our ground look a little more like ground, I guess. Here comes our mask. Isn't that beautiful? It just really makes that pop. Now we're gonna color this in. And I was talking a little bit about why am I using Stampin' Blends versus regular markers. I'm going to show you a sample in just a second, and you'll totally understand why these markers are so fabulous and why you need them. See how I'm scribbling here? Once this dries, there's no more scribble marks. Regular markers don't do that. And while I use markers for a lot of things, small coloring, like I could color in the ivy leaves and the berries with regular markers because you don't have a big area like this. But when you color a big area like this with regular markers, you get all kinds of scribble marks. And the neat thing about the Stampin' Blends is, as you can see, when this dries, alcohol marker, it doesn't have those scribble marks anymore. And I really don't like them. Like, I think it looks like a 3-year-old colored, and I don't want any of my cards going out looking like a 3-year-old did it. So right now I'm just using the dark Old Olive marker, and I'm putting a shadow line along the left side of my bottle of wine. And now you're going to keep coloring until that blends. See how that took out that specific line? I hope you can see this. Make sure you make your screen big so you can see what I'm doing here. But I'm just blending, blending, blending until there's no more line there. and it just blends into a shadow on the side. I love that look. And then I'm just going to color in my leaves here and my berries. And don't forget that these markers have two ends. They have the coloring end that I tend to use more, and then a smaller end for smaller items. And we've got our color lifter. So if you happen to make a little boo-boo, you can just erase it. All right, this is the inside of our card. Are you excited so far? I've got a little bit more coloring to do here. Let's bring that inside back because I forgot to show you. This is what the bottle looks like colored with regular markers. I don't care what kind of markers you use. If they're not alcohol markers, they are not going to look beautiful like this. They're going to look, like I said, a 3-year-old colored them. They look horrible. So that's why alcohol markers makes everybody look like an artist. All right, so I've got these 2 pieces done. Now I'm going to show you a little bit about the paste that I use to make the brick. I always think of wine as, you know, like old Italy. You know, you have your wine and you have old brick buildings. And so I thought this brick mask was the perfect mask to use with my wine card. Whoops. So I'm just going to line this up on here. This is called the Pattern Party Decorative Masks, and you get these great little squares. We have some clouds. That's really fun to make with paste. And then we also have this big image, which is also, again, really fun to make. Now, I don't know if I've ever shown you, but you can add color to your paste. So you would take it out and you'd put it on another dish or a small plate, and you can mix it up with re-inkers and make it colored. We're just going to use ours white today. These are the palette knives. You get 3 different knives in a pack, and this is our embossing paste. And I'm just going to grab some on the back of my knife, and I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to push it down like this. And I'm just pushing it in to the mask and making sure that I'm getting it all nice and flat. You know, I'm scraping it off good. There we go. Are you ready for the magic? Ta-da! How cool is that? I love, love, love this look. Now, I timed the card that I made so I would know what to tell you about drying time. I walked away from this and I came back about 10 minutes later and it was completely dry and ready for me to use. So you can use that. It probably takes less time than that, but 10 minutes worked for me. I'm just going to grab a fresh sheet of paper here so we can keep working. I have one that's already done and dry, so I'm just going to set this aside and I'll finish that card later. Now I'm going to show you what I did with the ground area here. Just like I made the mask for the wine bottle, I also made a mask for my wine glass. I wanted to mask that. I'm going to use my crumb cake ink again, and I'm going to do my ground. Nice small circular motions here. I don't want to get it too dark. Then I'm going to sponge my bricks. And bring my little splotches back in there. Now, I didn't like the splotches being on my bricks. And what I found is you can take a tissue and you can wipe, and it will pretty much take the spots off the front of your bricks so that they're just on the background that's in between the bricks. So I thought that was kind of cool, right? All the kind of, I learned a lot of things about a lot of things while I was making this card. Okay. Let me get this colored in quickly. Now we're ready to put our card together. Got a little bit too much glue on here. I'm going to just smear some of it on there. Make sure you're not using too much glue. I have people ask me every once in a while, they say when I use glue it leaves raised lines on the front. That's because you're using way too much glue. You don't want to hold it up here and let it drop. You want to touch the tip of your glue to your layer. And that's just a very, very fine line of glue that I'm using. And believe me, my cards do not fall apart. But you also don't get that, like it looks like you have worms on the front. It's kind of a creepy way to say it. Okay. Oh, and one other thing. When you use alcohol markers, they will bleed through the back of your layer. So you don't ever want to like, this is our card and we're going to color directly on there with alcohol markers because this is what the back looks like. It's not attractive, but we are going to cover that up anyways because this goes right on the inside of our crumb cake card base. I've left enough of a margin around all the sides. Then you're going to glue the inside in with a smaller little line of wine glasses, and I'm just going to center this. Then I'm going to close my card, and I'm coming in with glue just on this one side, and you're going to put it directly over the layer that's underneath of it. Just like that. Just like that. I've got one more thing to show you. Here is this adorable cherry cobbler stitched, double stitched ribbon. This is so fun. I love the little X's on here, and I love the fact that our ribbon matches our cardstock. Stampin' Up! Is really cool for that. There we go. I'm just tying this in a knot, maybe. I seem to be having a little difficulty here. Some days are better than others. I better put my crown on. I stamp better when I have my crown on. Have you guys seen my crown? Here's my crown. Sometimes I wear it when I'm stamping. I always wear it when I'm together with my Stampin' Up! Friends because we're better together and we look great in tiaras. My husband asked me a few minutes ago when I showed him this card, he said, "Why are you wearing a crown?" I said, "Because I'm stamping." Okay, last but not least, I took the fine tip glue pen and I used it on my wine glass here. I wanted this to look wet. And I just thought that was a cool little accent because the front of the card says this is a white Christmas, and I wanted that to go along with the white wine. Remember that? So now I've got that, and it looks, oops, I've got a hole right in the middle. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And then once this dries, and that'll take, you know, a few minutes depending on how much glue you use, I'm going to fill in the inside. And I also added, can you see that? I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I also made all of these wet. And I did that before I put this card together. So it's all dry. You don't want anything to happen to that. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do my sponging here. And I apologize for that, but I did not mask anything on this layer. I just took my sponge and rubbed it on the bottom and then stamped my little polka dot stamp there. Kind of just like I did here, but I didn't need to mask this. Okay, there is, I'm going to set this card aside because it's wet, but here is our fabulous double front fold. Isn't this cute? I'm really quite proud of it. I love it when a stamping session goes well and I'm happy with what I've created. Half Full is a fabulous stamp set. I'll have the item code up on the screen. This is in our holiday mini catalog in case you want to order it. Everything that I used, everything I stamped here is out of this set except the little spots that I got from the painter's palette. So there you go, you guys. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your busy day to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, you can contact me through my blog, or you can pop me an email at kelly@astampabove.com. I'd be happy to send you our current catalogs. We have brand new ones coming out in January. Don't forget to click down here in the corner and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You don't want to miss anything that I have coming up. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.